Hello again, Chris Lee and Chase Robinson of Southeastern 16 here to talk some Tennessee football. When we do that, our go-to guy, Tony Basilio, friend of the show, friend of mine personally. Tony, thanks for joining us so much on what's a busy time. Glad to see you survived the week so far. I know you're a busy man.
Well, I mean, we were on for like 5.5 hours after the Alabama win, and Alabama's had trouble in the state of Tennessee this year, I guess we could say, guys.
Yeah. You didn't pass out this time, did you?
No. Well, that usually comes afterwards. That's sort of our tradition around here, but hopefully no passing out this week.
Well, let's hope not too. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much for joining us on a busy week. Obviously, we're doing this right after Tennessee has beaten Alabama. What was the thought and the reaction of that whole, I say spectacle in a good way. Obviously, you had goalposts coming down. Anytime you beat Alabama, it's a great thing. You had a cloud of cigar smoke hanging over the stadium, all the stuff that came with it. But what was it like just to watch that unfold, especially after a first half in which Tennessee didn't score?
It's just such a great tradition. You know, it's that Tennessee Alabama thing is just so special. Mm-hmm. And we're in a league where, you know, they put the focus this week on the Texas Georgia game. And Tennessee and Alabama are both pretty good. So generally that would have been the game of the week. And of course, one of the things I focused on was you can't change tradition. You can pretend like you're changing it. I mean, the SEC network, they can show Texas stuff all they want, but it's hard for any of us, you know, to conceive of Texas being an SEC team. There's just so much tradition around this Tennessee-Alabama series. And the thing that's interesting, Chris, and Chase, about this series is that both fan bases down through the years have a real respect for each other. It's pretty unique. It's not like Tennessee and Florida per se,
yeah,
or some of these other deals where, you know, you hate your rival and, you know, it's just very dismissive. No, this one's born out of appreciation for each side. And, you know, because there's been talk about discontinuing this, and I think both fan bases would despise that. Nick Saban said that he had a tougher time getting his kids up for the Auburn series when he coached than he did for the Tennessee series. He said that over the weekend, and I believe that.
Yeah, and I do. I live in the state of Alabama, do sports talk in the state of Alabama, and have heard over the last week, maybe this week, like just the importance of this game, this Alabama-Tennessee game. And especially with the older fans, I feel like this is such a meaningful rivalry. And I feel like what we saw Saturday night, what we saw in 22, what we saw last year, like this, to me, are some of the best years of this rivalry. It's close games, it's good games. You know, for so long, it was lopsided in both ways. Tennessee had a long streak, Alabama had a long streak. And so I feel like this is what we're getting out of this rivalry, such good games.
They are great. They're great games. They're cleanly played. Of course, Saturday in the Inland Stadium was Flag Day. They got to figure out a way, guys, to shorten these college football.
Oh, my goodness.
They just do. I mean, you're not going to grow your sport. Look, they keep falling forward, which is kind of funny. I mean, They had 2 games of over 10 million people this week in the league, both those signature games. But, man, it is a hard sport to watch. And from that Alabama perspective, I mean, the offense in that game and the accuracy of both those quarterbacks for 2.5 quarters both ways was tough to watch, guys. But Tennessee won the game. Hopefully this kid grew up a little bit at quarterback for the Vols.
Yeah, let me ask you about that, because you can look at it glass half full, glass half empty. On one hand, we all saw the throws that were missed. On the other hand, Tennessee won the ball game. He's a young kid. You figure he's going to get better. How do you see it at this moment, maybe just for the rest of the season going forward?
Can't overreact to it, you know. It's like a lot of things in this league. It's a week-to-week proposition. So, you know, a quarterback plays well one week and you go, man, that guy's really got it going. If you would have watched Milroe the first half of that Georgia game, this guy's going to get the Heisman Trophy race before it's over. Mm-hmm. What has happened to him? Conversely, Nico just doesn't look comfortable from the pocket. So we have Watson Brown with with us once a week. And Watson said, coming out of September, he's like a quarterback whisperer guy. He said, it's funny. He said, this schedule Tennessee's played in September is not going to help this kid because he's not comfortable in the pocket. I didn't believe Watson at the time. I believe him now. Tennessee did some things in the second half. They rolled him out. Chris, the saying is they got him off platform, whatever that means. I think we're bored, all the things we say about football these days, but he made some plays, and you have to do that in games like that. His numbers were not good at the end of the game, but it's almost the point in our league where it doesn't matter what your numbers are at the end of a game.
Yeah.
And really, the next time you take the field, anything can happen in this deal, and probably will. And so he's a young kid. He's got to grow. They feel pretty good internally that he got his nose bloodied a little bit, got thrown to the ground, had to leave the game for a play. The kid that took his place threw an interception, and they got him back in there in the next series, and he sort of caught fire. I think he got angry.
Chase, you got the next one, but before we get there, remind our channel sponsored by BetOnline. Basketball fans, it's that time of year again. I know Tennessee looking forward to basketball as well as am I. Got to talk to Rick Barnes briefly last week at SEC Media Day. The NBA is back from opening tip-off to buzzer beaters. BetOnline has you covered with the best odds, biggest promotion, and live in-game betting on all your favorite teams. This season, every game matters. BetOnline has every stat, matchup breakdown, and live odds to bet on during the game. And it's not just the NBA. BetOnline has odds on everything football, MLB playoffs, NHL, to political props. Head on to the website today to get in on all the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. BetOnline, the game starts here. All right, Chase, you get the next one here.
Yeah, when you look at I really like Tennessee's defense, Tony. I mean, I saw the stat they popped up there as the game was going into halftime, as Tennessee continuing their not scoring during the first half, and yet the game was 7-0, and that was because their defense. I really like the pass rush. Defensive line looks good. What do you like about this defensive line? And look, how important are they when the offense is struggling at times, when they're not scoring in the first half, that you have a defense that's keeping you in ball games?
It's everything, Chase, because if you stop and think about it, in this league right now, scoring seems to be down.
Yes.
Which I think that's going on across college football. And one of the things that's happening is they're allowing DBs to hold now. Clutch grab. Things that would have been penalties last couple of years just are not penalties this year. And it's really helped Tennessee because that defensive line is excellent. Tennessee's defense from the word go this year, they went from a finesse, a couple years ago. Finesse, you're going to throw all over us. Bend but don't break. We're going to give up 500 yards a game. We're going to amass 700 yards a game, to now I feel like I'm back in the late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah.
What these games feel like. I mean, it's 6-0 at halftime. The other day with Florida, for the first time since 1963, Tennessee went 3 consecutive football games without scoring in the first half. 1963? I mean, think about that. So, and this is Josh Heupel's offense, but this team's tracking for a playoff appearance, perhaps. It's a glut there, but perhaps they are. The fact is, without that defensive line, and the secret sauce is they've got 12 guys they rotate. And they're all very good players. Very good. I think Tennessee's third-team defensive line could probably crack most teams' top 5, top 6, maybe top 7. And when you've got 12 of them and you bring those numbers at people, and I've talked to offensive linemen who say the last thing you want to see are guys, when you're out there sucking wind in the middle of that third quarter, the last thing you want to see are guys rotating in. And here comes a fresh body. And Tennessee does it all game long, and that's part of their secret sauce here.
Tony, I want to ask you about the defense. I think the question a lot of people had was the secondary. I think it was Jermod McCoy that had the pick in the end zone. Really nice pick. I think a one-handed job. I know Milroe was off in that game, missed some reads. I get that, but look, it's SEC football. It's tough any week. How do you feel like the secondary stands in terms of being a championship level group? And maybe it's not there with the defensive line. I get it. That's a high standard. But how do you feel about that bunch coming out of this game as Tennessee tries to make a playoff push?
They're good enough. They're shockingly much better than last year. Tennessee made a decision. The coaches in the back there, Willie Martinez, who's been in this place in the SEC, a couple different spots, veteran coach, and he was here once before. Look, fans are never going to love a secondary coach at any of these schools. They're just not, because teams are going to complete passes. Willie Martinez had senioritis. I mean, he had guys on the field, Chris, that ran like me, and they wouldn't take him out of games. I mean, they wouldn't, So this past offseason, they made a decision, which I'm glad they did. They told a bunch of guys who were veterans coming back, hey, look, sort of like the old Steeler coach Chuck Noll used to say, it's time for you to get on with your life's work, whatever that is. If you're going to transfer portal, go into the transfer, whatever you're going to do. So they shuffled the deck and they gambled. This McCoy guy comes from Oregon State. And look, early in camp, I was hearing really good things about him, but you know this. Down through the years, you hear so many good things about so many people. And then when I choose to believe that stuff, I get burned. Like Nico, I was hyping him up, Chris. I've embarrassed myself inordinately over the whole Nico thing, because we were putting so much on this kid that's just not fair to him. He's a kid. This McCoy guy I was hearing about in the summer, God, this guy's a special player. And I'm thinking, come on. He's just another one of these transfer guys. And, we swing and miss so much out of the portal. He's a hit. The safety that comes from MTSU is an absolute hit, who loves to hit people. And these guys are really, really, really playing at a high level. In fact, I apologized yesterday on the show because there's a free safety that plays for the Vols, Will Brooks, who, he's a walk-on, former Jeremy Pruitt walk-on. In the summer, I had to declare a moratorium on myself from talking about Will Brooks. I belabored that point so much, Chris, because I will take something and beat it into the ground, Chris. I was wrong about him. So this is mea culpa. This is mea culpa day with you, Chris Lee. Mea culpa day. You got me telling on myself. Secondary's pretty good, though. They really are.
When it comes to, you mentioned, look, and this is my last question before we let you go, but sure. Bye week this week, and then you got Kentucky, Mississippi State, Georgia, UTEP, Vanderbilt. That's the rest of the schedule. Some tough games in there. To you, what is some things Tennessee has to do? Look, playoffs on the horizon, just with one loss and that win over Alabama now. What does Tennessee need to do in the rest of the final stretch of the schedule here?
Quarterback's got to get better. I mean, it's got to be better. After the game, the air night chase, and look, I was on for 5.5 hours. People, which I look like it, by the way, people were saying, and I want to believe this, he's arrived. In this league, man, like I said, Jalen Milroe, first half of that Georgia game, looked like he was going to the Heisman Trophy. He did. And he's a veteran player.
Yeah.
And in this league, you've got to have consistent play out of that position if you have championship aspirations. You guys were talking about a couple of the components of Tennessee's defense. This McCoy guy's playing like an All-American right now in Tennessee's back seven. And if they can just get, how do I put this? If they can just get decent quarterback play, decent to pretty good.
Yeah.
They have a chance to cut them down, as we say in basketball. And if they don't, they could lose a couple more games before the season's over, because you're not going to win at Georgia. Look, you're not going to win at Georgia with him playing the level he is. And people say, well, come on, Tony, what about the way you finish a game? That's great. I mean, but it's more than just making two plays. You're on the road. It's a very difficult environment. And we've already seen with Georgia, when Georgia gets you in their scope, and they ratchet up their game for you, it is a completely different deal. They are a completely different animal. So I look at the rest of the season and I go, okay, Tennessee is an off week this week. Next week's Kentucky. Hey, if you don't get better quarterback play, that'll be a game. And then Mississippi State, people laugh at this. Mississippi State's starting to play better offensively. I don't take any of these games. I think in this league this year, I don't think anybody can overlook anybody. Anybody can, like Alabama, for instance. Alabama from here could go 10-2, or they could go 8-4. Yep. Nothing's going to surprise me. LSU could go 10-2, or they could go 9-3. Texas could go 11-1, or they could lose another one along the way. So I just think this Tennessee team has just got to be better on offense, and that passing game's got to get better.
Yeah. Dylan Sampson's a nice piece, though.
Hey, man, that's an old school running back right there. I mean, he's the yards after contact king, because their offensive line at times has left a lot to be desired. His effort's been phenomenal, just phenomenal.
Yeah, he has been fun. Tony, appreciate it. I know you got a radio show to do, and enjoy some Tennessee football the rest of the way. We will definitely talk to you again soon, but thanks so much for coming on with us today.
Hey, thank you. Give my best to Chris. Tell Chris he does his best work when he disappears.
Yeah, will do.
He does that very well. Thank you, guys.
Appreciate it, Tony. We are Southeastern 16, and we are brought to you by Bet Online.